Can you grow your way out of debt? The short answer from the U.S. perspective is no. No, you can't. Think about it like this. From a private sector perspective, let's say on a micro level, you borrowed $1 million and you bought some property, built a building, put a business in there, and now your goal is to grow your way out of debt because you have a fixed amount of debt, and then you have a fixed amount of interest. I assume you have a fixed amount of interest rate, and if you have an inclining, market share, where you're garnering more market share, sure, maybe you could grow your way out of debt over time, assuming that you didn't increase your spending. That includes your personal spending as well. So no buying jet skis and boats and all that crap, okay? No exotic vacations to the sandals resorts, none of that. You just work to pay off debt for your business. Maybe you could pull that off. That's possible. In today's world, though, keep in mind, you also have a sagging economy. You also have wages not keeping up with any of the inflation. You have people not really able to afford to function much any longer. So your business may or may not work. Now let's apply this to the U.S. The U.S. is a different animal entirely. The U.S. as a country, at the macro level, is increasing spending every day. I don't know what the number is, like 20 billion a day or something like that. Imagine like 20 of your closest friends becoming billionaires every single day. That's how much money this is. This is ridiculous. So the spending is increasing. The interest rates are basically flat, but there's still interest. And even at that level of debt, when you're talking about multiple tens of trillions of dollars, even 100 basis points is an insane number of interest in terms of absolute dollars. So, and on top of that, you also have unfunded liabilities. In other words, you've made a bunch of promises to people early on in the Ponzi scheme that you've got to pay them out these ridiculous retirement programs and pension programs and on and on, right? Does any of that make sense? So let's put the math together. On top of this, you also have a declining birth rate, right? The U.S. has a declining birth rate, and I know they're trying to shore it up with huge amounts of immigration, legal and otherwise. That's why the Orange Messiah will never deport all these illegals. He will not do it. I know you guys all see the Portland thing. Oh, look, they're owning Antifa. Those are actors, dude. Those are paid stuntmen, basically. They're paid, I think, $12,000 a week to throw bricks. Come on. That's all that is. That's a show. That's a show on the phone for you to look at, for you to have something to argue about on Bird site. That's all that is. No. If you were truly trying to mass deport all illegals, just to be clear about this, the first thing you would do is you would go after the trucking sector. That'd be the first thing you would do, because that would be the fastest way because they're a captive audience that you can catch them right there at a scale. No skill involved. So, yeah, no, they're not serious about this. Texas, I've said this before, if Texas and California alone went after the trucking sector, that alone would cripple the U.S., and that's why they will never do it. So that's why they're also importing all of the people from other countries. That's why they'll never shut off all the visa scams. Everybody's focused on H-1B, but there's like dozens of other visa scams that these people are using. So, and it's all to try and shore up these numbers rather than let the US dollar collapse, which is what it should do. It should be collapsing. And what should go away is the illusion of wealth. In other words, all the fake billionaires, all these fake companies that they exist on perpetual debt. All of that would go away. And then the American people, your small businesses, would pick up all the pieces. That's the truth. And then, the American people then own the land and the means of their production and so on. And not through a government apparatus, but just they'd own their own small businesses again. They'd be able to pick up all those pieces because the demand is still going to be there. It's just not going to be as big a demand as these companies require. Especially when you get bureaucracies that are that gigantic. It's just not possible to keep it going around. So no, the amount of debt the U.S. has as a country, there is no way out of that. There is no growing your way out of that. You could print a bunch of money. You could do that. You could print a bunch of dollars. But if you're going to do that, here's what they're going to do. They're going to print a bunch of dollars and try and do this top-down thing again, it doesn't really work. It's like trickle-down. It doesn't work. It sounds good in theory. It doesn't work in practice at all. It's like a whole bunch of other scams out there. On paper, they sound good until you actually try to put it in practice, and then it's like, this is just a big scam. Yeah, it's just a big scam. That's all most of this stuff is. So, yeah, they're going to try and do this top-down thing. It's not going to work for the American people. In other words, you're going to continue to go broke. they're still going to continue to socialize all of these fake billionaires and pundits and everything. Like, they're still going to continue to give them money. They're still going to print a bunch of money to bail out all these giant companies that hate you, right? All these giant companies, they don't like you anyway, but they're going to keep bailing them out. So the short answer, no, maybe they can grow their way out of debt that way, but that doesn't do anything for the American people at all.